Okay, is that better for everyone watching? Yep, excellent. Okay, welcome to the second episode of Copyscope, brought to you by Vitality Copywriting. So we're here every week to share some tips about how to write for your audience and how to get a good quality writing out there. So I will apologise, I'm not feeling too great today, so I'm going to keep this quite short. So sorry if I'm looking a bit pasty, but you know, as they say, the show must go on. So today I really want to talk to you about having a clear, strong call to action and why that is important. And the object of any piece of content we write is always going to be aimed at our audience doing something. You know, whether it's to buy a product or to subscribe to a podcast or to download a fact sheet or something like that. There's always going to be something we're going to ask our readers to do. So I think what's one of the most important things when it comes to writing calls to action is to make sure that there is only one call to action in any piece of copy. And there's a very good reason for this. It's that it allows us to focus on driving our audience towards that one goal. Compare a sales letter to sitting down in a restaurant. If you're sending out a sales letter, you want your audience, to place an order once they've finished writing that. But if you go to a restaurant and you're handed the menu, how much easier is it to get to that point where you're ready to order? You spend a lot of time thinking about what you want to eat, and at the end of the day, all of that dwell time, especially when it comes to advertising, that's just going to encourage your reader, your audience, to put your content down, and they'll move on and they'll forget about it, or they just won't make the decision. When you're writing the content, you need to be driving people to make that decision as soon as possible. So my big recommendation when writing a call to action is to make sure that there is only one, that you're very clear about what it's driving your audience to do, whether it's to subscribe to something, whether it's to ask for a quote or to download a product. Make sure there's only one, make sure it's very clear, and that way it's going to convert more. If you put 2 or 3 calls to action in one piece of content, you're just going to confuse your audience. They're not going to be sure about what you want them to do. So let's keep it simple. Let's keep it down to one call to action per piece of content. That doesn't mean you can't have more than one call to action on your website, for example, but make sure it's relevant to the content that you've written. Okay, so that's my tip for this week. And so now we'll move on to our audience questions section. Remember, if you want to ask questions to be answered in future shows, you can tweet them to me using hashtag Copyscope, and I'll be picking up on them. Today's question comes from Martin Humpbatch, who's on Twitter at Martin Humpbatch, and he asks, how do you find your voice when copywriting? And this is an absolutely great question, and what you've got to bear in mind is that as a professional copywriter, I have to be able to be quite adept at switching between different people's voices. So I might be writing for a charity one day, for a mobile phone company the next day, so I have to be able to switch between different voices. But talking about somebody who maybe runs their own business and who writes all of their content themselves, I think we need to look for a lot more consistency in that tone of voice, so that if someone picks up a letter from you or who visits your website, We need to have that consistency so that they can tell from the way you write that it's come from your particular company or your particular organisation. So how do we go about getting to that point where we have a consistent tone of voice? And I think the best route for this is simply to just practice writing and just do what comes naturally. We're in a position where it's never been more easy to tell whether someone is being authentic when they're writing to you, and so you want to try and be as natural as possible. And I know this can be difficult if you're in a larger organisation and more than one person is writing the content, but if you are the sole person in your organisation, or if you're writing a blog,